Hello, guys. Welcome back to Between the Ropes TV. Now, finally, it's here. And this should be a good one because Ray and I are disagreeing. But as we all know, it's the final fight week for Anthony Joshua. Well, actually, I should say Oleksandr Usyk versus Anthony Joshua 2.
Got to put the champion first, Josh.
We have, haven't we? So, I mean, before we'll get into that, let's start off with Teofimo Lopez. We said we would. Let's get into it. Ray, do you just want to give us a quick breakdown of that fight for those that haven't seen it yet?
Yeah, glad to see Teofimo back in action against Pedro Campa. Pedro is a solid, valid 140-pound campaigner. He would provide a good test for anybody looking to make a statement in that division. It went the way I thought it would do. I thought Teo would get the stoppage. I thought Teo would get the stoppage a bit earlier, but Teo had to break this guy down. And I think one of the key indicators and the key factors in this fight was whether his power, which was so devastating at 135, would translate over to 140. And in my opinion, was early on, Teo was dominating it. He was hitting Camper at will. He was hitting him clean. Evening, Dom. Nice to see you. Nice to have you. And also Boxing Historian. How you doing, mate? I don't know who he's calling beautiful. Like, I'm looking behind. I'm sure he's not talking about me. But I like the way Teo was going in. He was aggressive. He made sure he was economical with his punches. He did a lot of headhunting early on, and it was quite evident early on that Pedro could take headshots all day, all night long. He was tough as they come in, and that raised a few question marks for me. I started to doubt, well, does he really hit that hard? Could his power translate? Because he was hitting him with some beautiful, you talk about lead left hooks, some beautiful backhanders, and he wasn't really troubling Camper too much. But Teo didn't panic. He didn't load up on his shots too much. Used some nice footwork. And what I saw from Teo was his defense has improved. He took a little step back. He kept his right hand up. He when he threw his left hand came back to his face. And when you look at the Nakatani fight, he was getting clipped with right hands. Like it was nobody's business. So I started to see some improvements from Teo. He's tightened up defensively. He always had the footwork, but he was using it a lot more. He was trying to create angles for his work. When he realized he wasn't shifting Camper as easily as what he assumed, he was trying other things. He was trying to create angles. At one point, he even switched southpaw, although it was short-lived. He showed he could do that, and he had the confidence. I show a lot of confidence from Teo. There was the showboating still, Josh. I don't like to see it. I know you don't like to see it. I don't like to see it. At one point, Teo was doing that Superman punch again when he's kind of throwing a left hook mid-air with his feet in the air. Again, I don't like to see that. And it didn't have a great effect. It just almost looked as though, he was going through cheat level. If it was as a video game, Teo was almost on cheat level. But let's be fair, it was a good performance. Julie, the other thing I would say was Pedro was made for him. He wasn't the quickest of guys. He marched forward, and not every opponent at 140 is going to be like that. So I've still got to have some reservations about his power at 140. Also, I want to see a lot more body punching from him. I thought if he had targeted the body earlier on, he could have got Camp out of there quicker. It's almost like chopping down a tree. You work on the body and the head will go. But look, he got his guy out of there. I've got to give him an 8 out of 10 for that performance.
See, I mean, before I get into what I thought on it, guys, there's a few of you here. Hit that like button. If you are new, hit the subscribe button. There's a fair few familiar faces. But I mean, on this, I agree with Michael. His dad at the end was just... We're used to seeing it from him, aren't we? But I'm not a fan of it. And I to be honest, I just thought Lopez in general, really, I expected more from him. We talked about it should be, and it did prove to be a fairly routine victory. And I just think they've not really helped him because short of he's done the weight, and I think it was 138 points.
138, he came in that, yeah.
And he definitely looked better for it. And I understand, he was weight drained for a little while at lightweight, so he's benefiting. But as you said, Camper was just made for him. And I just think now, where does he really go from here? I think he could do with another fight at 140. There's talk of obviously the Ryan Garcia fight if we don't get Garcia Tank. But I just think it was a bit of a nothing fight. And, Top Rank, what they can be accused of, and it's fact, is the fact that they don't really tend to have the most active roster, do they? Like, and after a fight like that, for me, he needs to be back out start of November. Genuine, like, I think he needs to be back out and out quickly. I mean, we just had this comment coming, which is a good one, actually. Are you guys interested in a Lopez Catterall if Taylor defends the IBF that was ordered?
Yeah, I would love to see that fight. I would love to see that fight. I mean, Josh Taylor was an active fighter on the Top Rank and still is. But I get your point to some degree. I think there's still some routes for Tio to go. I was chatting to Davey Fulton in our chat, and we've got our phones, and some people had mentioned that the 140 is a weak division. I don't think it is. There was a lot of improving talent there. There's people like Regis Prograis you can have a good fight against. There's the likes of Montana Love still there. Gary Russell, Antoine, who's one of the younger Gary Russell brothers. They're all called Gary Russell. I think there's about 12 of them. So there are some names in there he can test himself with. Tio had a controversial spar against someone like called Jose Valenzuela. He's stepping up, I believe. So if you can't get those big fights against the likes of Tank and Ryan Garcia, there's the fights like a Jack Catterall, because Jack Catterall is a southpaw. He's tricky. He's skillful. He can look after himself on the inside as well as the outside. He's going to ask Tio a lot of problems because Tio's going to have to go looking for him. Whereas with Camper, he didn't have to go looking for Camper. All Tio had to do was be on the front foot. With Catterall, we're going to see how good Teofimo's ring IQ is, because Jack Catterall's a riddle. He's a bit of a puzzle, and you're going to have to figure him out, which means you're going to have to use feints. You're going to have to use their footwork to create those angles to open him up. You're going to have to keep your front foot on the outside of, the southpaw lead foot, and you're going to have to use disguise the use of your backhand, because we all know the best punch against the southpaw is the back right hand. So, you can use the left hook as well, but the back right hand does the most damage. So it's going to be interesting to see how he uses his intellect to work on those openings and get somebody like a Catterall. So that's a really good question.
Another good comment in. There's a lot of talent in there. Won't be long until Garcia and Haney will be in there too. Yeah, well, Garcia, in fairness, has sort of said, unless it's a special fight, he'll be at 140 now, which makes sense. Yeah. He's not a teenager anymore.
Big lad.
23. He's always been big for 135. And as age sort of creeps in, it becomes harder to lose the weight, doesn't it? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It sounds like it is just me. But I feel, if anything, I'm less high on Teofimo Lopez after that fight than I was before. I mean, me and you spoke, obviously, on WhatsApp, didn't we, Ray? And I'm not a fan of all the showboating. And I just think the only time I like to see that sort of showboating that he does is when it's two elite level fighters and it's just too easy for one of them. We saw it at times with Floyd Mayweather when he's been in with a Canelo or Pacquiao. And at that point, I think, no, you got to respect it because they're in with the best that's there. Fair enough. But, I just thought it's a bit of front off Lopez to come in and he's fighting someone who looks tailor-made for him, who's a bit, a journeyman really and truthfully. And, it's right, though, because I'll do a bit of dancing and showing off. I'm not a fan of it myself. I'm really not.
Yeah, I mean, Pedro had a very decent record coming in. I mean, he just hadn't fought in time. So there was no way we were expecting an upset. I agree with you. I think Tio's got to reserve that energy for the likes of Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, Tank, if he, Josh Taylor, Jack Catterall, because he's been taken seriously now. And then we can see if he comes through those guys, okay, then you can showboat. Look, he had a really, really good win against Lomachenko, an outstanding win, but time's moved on since then. He lost it in his first defense against Cambosis, who performed out of his skin. So although I rate Tio, I like Tio. I think he's a very good fighter, and there's room for development and progression. There's still what I've just said there. There's still room for progression. He's not finished the article yet, and he's got a long way to go in the 140 division.
100%. And let's be fair, and like while I've just slagged him off a bit, and I stand by it, he is young enough. He's got the career ahead of him, hasn't he, to make those adjustments. And I think, going back to a previous comment, the sooner he gets his dad out of there, the better for me.
Well, the thing is, we're talking about his dad, who's turned out to be more like Angel Garcia. Every passing by, isn't he? He's turned out to be like Danny Garcia's dad. But it's nice to see him have the well-respected Jorge Rubio in his corner, who can just calm things down in that camp. And if he sticks with Rubio in his camp, I think he'll learn and I think he'll go well.
Mm-hmm. Good to see you, mate. A new name, I believe, Ray.
John Zell, thank you very much for joining us. Hope to have you on the channel very, very soon.
Definitely. Hit that like button and subscribe button if you haven't already, John. And I just want to, before we move on, David's obviously put, I'm becoming a Garcia fan. He's a brilliant fighter and he's just in the social media generation. But this is the bit, won't be long until promoters won't be needed. And I've seen a few comments bandied about on social media about, alluding to the same sort of thing, how long before the promoter's gone and fighters self-promote. I all think it depends on the fighter because, Ryan Garcia, let's be fair, he's a good-looking lad. Obviously, he's big on social media. He gets his face about at the right circles, and you're smiling there, Ray, so I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to say in a second. But I just think not all fighters can do it. I think there's always going to be a call for a promoter because some fighters just want to, fight, and that's all they want to do. Do you want to share with us what your
I'm still laughing at Mickey C comment. Mickey C brings the comedy, doesn't he? He brings the facts, mixes in with the humor, so it's always interesting to read. But I'm also kind of smirking at the fact that we're talking about a generation now, and I'm talking about a generation from I would say since the 2020s, really, when social media has really kicked off. It's a different generation of boxing to how me and you grew up watching boxing, where social media wasn't as prominent. I don't think there'll ever be call me old fashioned, I don't think there'll ever be a time where we won't have promoters. Fights will always need promoters. Fights will always need because I think in cases the promoters are helping make the fight big as what they are. You'll always have crossover stars, whether it's through social media or through refusing to go to war, or because of their good looks, or because they're from a particular country, like Amir Khan or Anthony Joshua, or because of what they achieved in the amateurs. You'll always have crossover stars from different demographics, but I don't think at any point they'll replace promoters. They just play too big an important part in boxing. And when they do, if they ever do replace promoters, boxing will die.
No, I agree. We're going to have to move this on, Ray, because Dom, who's obviously quite active, has just messaged me to say this isn't what I tuned in for. Move on to AJ Usyk. So we'll do that. I mean, he needs slapping down, to be honest, Ray. I'll deal with
him. Well, you can do that. You might look like Mike Tyson, so I might have to take it easy.
No, he's a pretty boy, mate. Don't worry about that. So, yeah, let's get on to the main event of this week. Obviously, it's in Saudi Arabia. It's the big rematch. The Ring magazine's also been added now after Tyson Fury's 60-second retirement of this year. Now, we're a split camp, so guys, let us know in the comment section who you're supporting here. I've been Team AJ forever. I've always supported him since he started. I thought he was going to win the first fight, and he didn't. He tried to outbox the boxer. The mistake was obvious. But I still think, and I'm standing by, if he fights like the bigger man, and I know people have discredited the Chisora blueprint, but I still think it was laid. You could see Oleksandr Usyk didn't like getting hit, especially to the body. And I still think if Joshua fights like the bigger man, imposes himself, then, there's only one winner here for me.
My thing is this. he's coming. He looks a lot leaner, Joshua. He looks a lot leaner. If
He
you see
does.
his interviews that he's done this week, he looks a hell of a lot leaner. And I suppose the obvious thing is for him to adopt that style. Most people will think he'll bulk, he'll come in physically bigger to impose himself. I agree. He would need to impose himself on Usyk. However, my concern is if he does that, does he leave himself wide open? Because you saw late on in that fight, he was getting hurt by Usyk. He was getting hurt by Usyk, and I just worry about if he becomes too aggressive, he leaves gaps that Usyk exploits. And that's only my concern. My other concern is, has he got the stamina to put in on Usyk for more than 6 rounds? Because Usyk doesn't look as though he's going to get out of there in a hurry. Do you think? Do you
But
think that Josh, or do you think he can bulldoze him out of there?
I mean, Imran, great to have you in the comments, mate. You're obviously of the opinion that Usyk's too good. But on your point there, Ray, for me, he is coming in leaner, but for me, that's going to put less stress on him in terms of, the cardiovascular system. There's less muscle, so the heart's not going to work as hard to keep him going. As long as he's kept that same snap and power, which I know people will say he's been a bit gun shy, sort of,
Yes.
since the release, and he has. But I think at Pulev, in the Pulev fight, what he actually showed was that it's not necessarily gun shy. It's just a bit more harnessed and a little bit more thought out. Because as soon as he knew Pulev was hurt, we saw some small shades of the old Anthony Joshua. But I think it's also worth mentioning that the old Anthony Joshua, in fairness, what he was doing was demolishing journeymen on the build. And then, we always see these sorts of fights, don't they? When they get to that world level where you fight in serious contenders.
Did a job on Dillian White, though.
He did do his job on Dillian White, but Dillian White also took him to the 7th round, which I think previously he'd only been into the 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah.
So what the big power that people talk about of Anthony Joshua, I genuinely, since the Dillian White fight, I've not thought it's quite as concussive as people make out, if you know what I mean.
Not even against Klitschko.
No, because he didn't blow him away, did he? We were used to, if an Anthony Joshua fight saw the 2nd or 3rd round, you were surprised, and then it slowed down massively. And then again, you think back to the Takam fight. I know it wasn't his best performance in general, but I think it's fair to say his power's not tapered off. That's harsh, but it's definitely not as concussive as we thought. But what he has done over that run of world title defenses and unifications is his boxing ability has either got better, but he's also shown it more ways he didn't need to on that build.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think, with Robert Garcia, they've made no secret aggression's the key. I genuinely think with that aggression, they'll win it. Imran's here. There's a lot of flaws with AJ. We have talked about this mental thing, and that's going to be, if I was Robert Garcia talking to Anthony Joshua about coming and coaching him, that would have been the main question for me, talking to him. And, because as bad as it is when you speak to people who, troubled mentally in whatever capacity, you can see how bad it is. And when you'd ask that question, you could see if it's something that can be fixed or if it's something, that can't be fixed. Michael C. Go on, Ray. Do you want to handle these comments?
Yeah. So Mickey C says Usyk is a far superior boxer. Styles make fights. Joshua has a puncher's chance like any fighter, but he isn't good enough boxer to mentally concentrate for 12 rounds. I think that's an important point because if we go back to when Usyk fought Bellew, it was quite clear for me that Bellew was winning those early rounds. Bellew was the effective aggressor. He was the ring general in the fight. You could argue to and fro who had a better defense, but the cleaner, harder punching was coming from Tony Bellew. So for me, I had him ahead in that fight. What was becoming quite clear in that fight, though, was Bellew was starting to tire, and it wasn't necessarily from any punches Usyk was throwing. It was more around the things Usyk was doing in the ring without throwing punches, using his footwork to close down the space, throwing feints, making Tony Bellew think about every single punch that he was throwing. And he was wearing out Tony Bellew to the point where he was exhausted, left the gap, got exposed, and he got knocked out. Now, Anthony Joshua, we already know he's got stamina issues. We already know he's got concentration issues, and we already know he lacks a lot of confidence. So that's a brilliant point because I think that's asking a lot for him to do all those things in a 12-round fight. If he does do that fight, mark my words, write it down, Josh, and everyone in the chat. I will have that as the best win for a UK heavyweight if he pulls it off. If he pulls it off,
I hear all that. No, I was going to say I hear all that, and I don't disagree, but I also think, you know, we've seen him bounce back from defeat, haven't we? Obviously, he lost to Ruiz in quite bad fashion. The performance and everything, as opposed to the actual stoppage, although it was a stoppage loss. But he came back from it, and I know people will say Ruiz didn't train for the rematch, and that's fine. Yeah, okay, clearly he didn't. However, you can only judge Anthony Joshua on him, and he did. He went away, made the adjustments, realised I'm going to have to box to beat Ruiz, and he boxed perfectly for me. I genuinely, you know, that fight, he did everything he had to do. It wasn't a spectacular performance. I'm sure, you know, he probably didn't gain many fans, certainly not casual fans. Hardcore fans, I think you have to appreciate it, but casual fans wouldn't have been impressed by the performance. However, he's shown he can go away, make an adjustment, and that was with a 6-month layoff. This time, he's had 11 months since the first Usyk defeat. You know, there's talk now that he's actually been training with Robert Garcia, amongst others, since December. So he's had a long camp, and he will have had a long camp because he's leaned right down. We can see that. So he's clearly put the work in. I've also seen comments from him that he didn't work hard enough within the first camp to do the 12-round plan that he wanted. And I think you could see that. I think, you know, particularly at points in the middle, and then he got a bit of a second wind, and then towards the end he was just gassed. And, you know, fair enough. Or only he will know how true or how much he's just saying that for interviews for the sake of it. Yeah. But I really thoroughly believe he's done it once. He can go away, make the adjustments, and come back. And, you know, boxing historian, I knew we were on the same page from last week. I was waiting for an AJ wins comment. Ray's backing it. There we go. In fact, I'm just going to leave this comment in there now. I've seen Imran's commented back, and I'm not thrilled with it. It is an interesting question, but I still think, although Usyk, I think, does look bigger, and we spoke about it briefly on a previous video.
Size won't win fights. It won't win this fight. It won't be the size. It'll be the skill, and that's the thing. We talked about the Andy Ruiz fight and how he did so well in that rematch, but Andy Ruiz was a completely different proposition. Andy Ruiz would come forward and throw a lot of shots and hope to catch you with a shot that you don't see. He didn't really have any other strategy or any other game plan other than that. And because he was so lethargic in the second time fight, he was easily kept at bay with a nice, long, stiff jab. Usyk's are slightly different. Usyk can sit on the back foot all night if he wanted to. When Usyk goes forward, he's got rolling head movement. You know, he twists his feet. He makes his body look even smaller than it already is. He's got a real tight defense. I know what you mean. He doesn't like that pressure. He doesn't like that physical leaning on him. He doesn't like those body shots. But Joshua struggles against smaller fighters. You know, I didn't think his performance against Takam filled me with any confidence. I wasn't convinced. His first fight against Ruiz was terrible. Against Usyk as well. To try and outbox Usyk on the back foot, it was never going to work. But like I said, for me, that's the way to win the fight, for him to pose himself, to target his body, to stop Usyk from moving, and to push him back and to get him onto those ropes and to get him in tight corners, then to let go of his hands. If he can sustain that, keep his wits about and keep his concentration, avoid what's coming back, you know, he's got a very good chance. But I just don't think Joshua has the psychological capabilities to pull that off. But, you know, I've been wrong about him before.
There you go. A few comments. Let the punk talk. That's Jack Hughes, the new Southern Area champion.
How you doing, Jack? Nice to have you on.
A friend of the channel. He's been on a few times. Jack, as the pro here, I'd love your opinion, mate. who is winning this fight? I'm hoping you say Joshua now because I've just bigged you up and I'm going to look a right melt if you say Usyk. So, boxing historians back. It's mad that we all said after the first fight that Joshua should have used size, but now Joshua is slim and Usyk is large. I was saying this with a work colleague earlier today. We're actually saying, like, you know, we've all been saying exactly that. Joshua needs to use his size, and now they've sort of switched. But I'm excited to see a leaner Joshua because if you can keep that power in there as well, I'm really looking forward to testing and seeing what he can do with Usyk. Like, you know, let's not forget Usyk's had that same stretch out the ring another 11 months, and he's had a different time, obviously, with the unfortunate events going on at the minute in Ukraine, and he went and defended his country, so fair play to him for that. But he's not been in the ring, he's not been training. If the stories are true, Anthony Joshua has. So, again,
could that not work against Joshua, though? Joshua? Could that not work against Anthony because, you know, he's been out there, he's been training non-stop for, we think, 10, 11 months. Usyk, although he, no doubt he would have some sort of some trauma after what he's been through and what he's seen, but he's had a physical break. He's had a break away from training. Sometimes that can do a fighter some good.
But with what he was doing, it wasn't a physical break, was it? If you know, we don't know to the extent of what he was doing, but obviously we can have a fair idea.
Well, he wasn't sparring. We know that. You know, he wasn't sparring. He wasn't training. I mean, he had lost. I think he had lost weight out there. He had lost a lot of weight. They were saying when they spoke to Lomachenko's dad that they were saying Usyk had lost a lot of weight being out on the front line. So he definitely wasn't doing any sort of training. When I'm talking about training in relation to boxing training.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Joshua clearly was. Look, it's we're on about activity and things like that. But there's also time when you can spend perhaps too much time training. I'm just wondering, could that potentially have an adverse effect on Joshua as well?
Jack's back, not an AJ fan, but having said that, he believes if he gets the game plans right, throws him about and makes it messy, he could knock him out, that's for me, that's the only way he wins it, and he's just got to do it. But you are right, Usyk is a master boxer. It is interesting. And to be fair, I'm loving this 50-50 prediction because it's one of the few fights I've not actually seen many people say a 50-50. Most people I've seen, in fairness, seem to be Usyk, but definitely a prediction one way or the other. It's tough, isn't it? But does anybody think that the location, obviously with it being in Saudi Arabia, I know both, particularly through the amateur system, they travel. Obviously, Usyk, in fairness, in particular, a lot of Anthony Joshua's pro career has actually been fought, obviously, in the UK, or most of it anyway. But do we think that has any impact? Do you think that No.
Well, I mean, when was the last time Usyk fought at home? I mean, Usyk's, for me, the modern-day world warrior. I mean, if you look at his resume, his performances away from home have been absolutely nothing short of top class. Anthony Joshua's been over to Saudi Arabia and won before. When you get to this level, this elite level, your location isn't going to be affecting you. Isn't going to be affecting you at all. And like I said, Usyk's resume is second to none. When you're talking about traveling away from home, the succession of fights that he's had, and he's produced the goods. I don't think it'll affect him and Anthony Joshua. He had the bad performance over in the States, but you know, he did well in the rematch in Saudi Arabia. I can't see it affecting him either.
So I've got one more thing then for me to talk about anyway. So going into this, obviously, a lot's been made. Obviously, Usyk always a blown-up cruiserweight, and obviously we know Tyson Fury in particular has been very vocal on that.
Yeah.
If Usyk does win, which we know he won't, because obviously he predicted that he won't.
But I can see you touching all sorts of wood in the house. You're touching that wooden wardrobe.
No, it's absolutely right. But if Usyk does by some miracle win, and I'm wrong, where does he then rank in terms of the heavyweight scene? Is he ahead? Does this move him ahead of Fury with all Fury's stuff he's in and he's out, and who knows?
Yeah, for me, it takes him. You know, I was reading in a debate the other day about, you know, if Usyk wins, where does that put him amongst all the heavyweight greats? And for me, we're not ready for that talk yet. Where we sit, we're not ready for that talk. But we're talking about the here and now. And if Usyk gets the win against Joshua, wow! For me, that cements him as being all the best heavyweight today. And it's on Usyk, sorry, it's on Fury to make that fight for the undisputed. And then there's question marks about Fury if he doesn't want to make that fight. And then he goes and fights some MMA fighter or takes on some exhibition fight. That tells me what he thinks of Usyk. I'm starting to think about Tyson Fury now. If you'd asked me 3 or 4 months ago, no, I wouldn't have said that. But the kind of talk that I'm hearing from Tyson Fury, it's almost like he knows what Usyk's about. But that's I could talk for another 6 hours about who I think would win out of Fury and Usyk. But it's a really good question, Josh, because if he does a job on Joshua this time round, you've got to sit up and take notice of Oleksandr Usyk, and he'd be well deserved of the 3 or 4 heavyweight belts, and he's got to have the lion's share of any negotiations with Tyson Fury. And for me, resume-wise, Tyson Fury's is poor. It really is. Take Deontay Wilder out of it. I know there's Dillian White there. There's Klitschko there. There's nothing that comes out of me that this is a good resume. So you're going to have to put Usyk before him.
No, I do agree. And that brings me on to my last point anyway. Obviously now Fury's, 1 minute he's retired, then he's back, then he's retired again. The Ring Magazine's been added, the Ring Magazine belt has been added to this fight, which is brilliant news for me because I do think it's actually a travesty. Fury had it for all those years he was out of the ring, and while it was genuine reasons he was out of the ring, I do think all belts should be in play and be active. And I think Anthony Joshua's been unlucky to have not fought for it previously with the sort of resume that he's got, in fairness to him.
Yeah, true.
But August the 26th, the WBC have given Tyson Fury to decide if he is retired or...
sorry, is that this year or next year? Because he's going to have an answer by then, is he?
Well, who knows? But this is my point. Yeah. That's obviously very, very tactical because that gives us this fight. Then they've got a few days to see if discussions can be made for an undisputed fight. Let's be honest, that's what it boils down to. But for me, with all the messing about Fury's done, should the WBC not just step in and be like, hang on, mate, you're starting to actually make a bit of a mockery of our belt? And should it be chucked into this fight as well? They're both well-ranked.
That's a two-pronged question, because you could argue the WBC have made a mockery of boxing with some of the things that they've done, and that's this year alone. That's for another video. But I'll answer that by saying...
we'll do that one, WBC.
You're getting me started now. You're winding me up. You're waiting until 40 minutes in and you're winding me up. You're clever, you. But yeah, I would, if I was them, the term I would use is I would sack off Fury. What I mean by that is I would be very harsh on Tyson Fury, because he's already... The Ring Magazine's, it's not a belt, and he's been clever, Tyson Fury, because the Ring Magazine is not, it's a mythical status, and really it's not an actual belt. So to give that up, but to hang on to the WBC, he's playing mind games, and this is what Tyson Fury is very good at doing. I just wonder that Tyson Fury will try and play out that he's holds all the aces, but no, in my opinion, they should get an answer for him swiftly, whether he wants to continue on or not. If he does, great, fantastic. They can make this fight. Get rid of the mandatories and just concentrate on making this fight, because that kind of what damaged it for me between Wilder and Joshua. Wilder and Fury. We get I'll get it right, between Joshua and Fury, because of all those issues with the arbitration with Wilder. I don't think they're going to need any of that. I just think we know that these two need to fight. A bit like what's happening at welterweight between Spence and Crawford. These guys just need to sit on the table and get it done. The sanctioning bodies need to work together to ensure they don't interfere by imposing unnecessary mandatories on these fighters to give people like Fury, oh no, I'll take this mandatory instead. No, it's not. It's not for me. They didn't really need to make sure that Tyson Fury is quick and sharp in the decision. And then so we know if we're going to have this undisputed heavyweight title fight, which the fans all deserve.
There we go. Ray, I think Imran's just going to jump on and give us his full breakdown of the fight.
Yeah, no worries. I've just seen a comment there from Jack as well. We'll get that on. Yeah, Jack says Usyk would never beat Fury in a million years. I agree that Fury has been embarrassing, but Usyk never beats him. Yeah, I mean, I go on that one. I just think that, for me, when Usyk, I say when, I'm pretty confident Usyk will beat Joshua. He'll come in with the three belts. He's got more. He becomes the A side for me in that fight. He becomes the A side. So I think Fury will start to play the mind games that he's the A side. Yeah, Fury's got all the ability in the world. He's got the height advantage, reach advantage. He's got the power advantage as well. I just think in terms of the bargaining in that fight, Fury will believe he holds all the cards. I think they'll lie Usyk. But I agree, I'll have Fury winning that fight. But nevertheless, that fight needs to happen, and you've got to ask question marks of Fury if he's prepared to chase. I mean, I'm not too clued up with who's that Cameroonian lad from MMA, Josh Francis Ngannou or something like that.
Ngannou,
Yeah, trying to be making fights with and trying to go into WWE, and you know why go down that direction when you can make history with Usyk.
Well, here we go. We've got Imran with us, but just before I pass over to you, Imran, great to have you with us. This comment's interesting off Jack. If the WBC stripped, as in Fury, Joe Joyce should get the shot first. Now, Jack, I'm a big fan of everything you're doing, genuinely. Your social media is great. Guys, for anyone who's not seen that, check Jack the Punky Hughes out on Instagram and Twitter. It's a great page to follow. But I couldn't disagree anymore. I'm not a fan of Joe Joyce, but I just think
he's got a tough fight though, isn't he? He's got Dewey Parker on his hands.
He has with Parker, but that's the first real world level fight that he's taking for me. Dubois was English, British level.
Yeah, agree.
And then he's fought Takam, so yes, it's the Parker fight's great, but for me, if the WBC were going to strip Fury, I'd be chucking the belt in with this. Evening, Joel, evening. Now we've got Imran, guys.
How are you doing?
Guys, if you haven't, check out Imran Mir TV. It really is a fantastic channel with great content pretty much every day. Imran, give us your thoughts on this fight on the weekend.
Firstly, it's great being on, guys. How are you?
Yeah, we're fine, mate.
Not bad, mate, not bad.
So it's a great fight. Like, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Me and Ray have been talking in WhatsApp about it, breaking it down. I'm very high on Usyk. I told Ray a long time ago that this guy is something special. But I think it's not going to be that easy. I think Joshua does have a chance in this fight because it's heavyweight boxing. And if it was a lower weight class, probably say no chance. But this is heavyweight boxing, and Joshua's done the right things. He's looking leaner. And I was telling Ray yesterday that the people think that a guy that's bulky is dangerous because he's big and strong. Actually, coming in leaner is going to make him more explosive because he's going to be faster. He's going to be able to hit Usyk with shots that he doesn't see coming. And that's to be honest, that's the chance I give him. Really, he has to catch him with something huge. And also, I think Josh, you mentioned it earlier. Usyk has, I'll say, a history, but there is a question mark about his body resistance. My brother mentioned it yesterday when we were talking about it. He said that he's been, I believe he's been down as a pro to the body. And also, was it Arthur Beterbiev in the amateurs?
In the amateurs, yeah.
Yeah, so there is a question mark there. However, there's not many flaws in Usyk's game. He's got great stamina. He's got great footwork. He's got a great chin. He's mentally very, very strong. So there's not really a lot of flaws in that man's game. When you think about it, when you look at Usyk as a fighter, what does he do that's bad? What does he do? Like, everything is exceptional. Like, he's just exceptional at everything. So, and with Joshua's, in my opinion, got to take a risk. So someone said that he's got to go down to the body, but in order to do that, he's going to leave himself open at the top to get caught with a shot. Does he, if he gets caught once, is he going to say, oh, no, I'm going to go back in my defensive mode like he did last time?
He
And
reverts
that's the
tight.
question. When he gets hit on the chin, how will he react to taking that punch? I mean, what I mean is not he'll get flattened. What I mean is, how will he react to it? Will he go into a defensive shell, or will he say, I don't care, I'm going to go after him, I'm going to attack him? That's what I want to see when he gets hit by Usyk, how he reacts to that.
Here's a question for the two of you, because I know Josh mentioned that the venue might or could potentially have some part to play in the outcome of the fight. What I want to know from the two of you, I'll start with you, Josh, first, is Joshua has two guys in his corner, yeah? Angel Fernandez and Robert Garcia. Robert Garcia has never been in a heavyweight fight. How significant is that going to be? Because when it gets sticky for Joshua and it gets difficult, he's going to go back to the corner. Who's he listening to, and how key is the advice he's going to get from both men? And really, it should be the one man. Is that going to be confusing for Joshua, or is it going to be simple? Do you think Robert Garcia is going to sort of like supersede Angel Fernandez? How do you see it, Josh?
Well, it should be quite simple, because if you're Anthony Joshua, you've brought, you've kept Fernandez, you've brought in Robert Garcia for a reason. So I think that I can't even think if they've said whether Robert Garcia will be the main man. They just talk about the team. But regardless, there will be a main man in the corner, and internally, externally, whatever, they will know. And for me, you don't go to the aggravation of going around America, putting yourself about for a new trainer to appoint Garcia to then listen to a guy you already had. For me, I just think it would make no sense. So if he was listening to Angel Fernandez in a tricky moment on the weekend, it'd be a bit naive and a bit silly of him, to be totally honest. I hear what you're saying about Garcia in terms of the heavyweight experience, but he has trained world champions to big wins. I don't think that's such a factor. I think it's just a case of if you brought out the aggression in Joshua that he needs to bring out to make this. So that is something we won't really know until Saturday. We might get a little bit of a sniff of it as the week goes on with the workouts and the pressers. But for me, if we see an aggressive Anthony Joshua, Robert Garcia's done his job. If, as Imran rightly said there, and it is a valid point, how does Joshua react when he gets landed on the chin? If he does go back to type, then for me, the mental frailties of him are worse than we've all thought, or Robert Garcia has not done his job. I think that's genuinely how it boils down. And that may seem harsh, but that is just genuinely how I see it.
Imran?
Ray, you know what? I actually agree with what Josh is saying. I actually agree with what you're saying, in the sense that I'm not... With Robert Garcia, I think Robert Garcia is a really good trainer, but he's had a similar type of fighters throughout his career. Like, look at Brandon Rios, Maidana. Mikey Garcia was a really good boxer. But when we look at like the fight, like how the thing I want to see from AJ is when people keep going on about he's got to be aggressive. He's got to be aggressive. How is he going to be aggressive? That's what I want to see, because Robert Garcia had fighters like Maidana that were very aggressive, but AJ doesn't fight like that. So AJ can't fight like Maidana. He doesn't have Maidana's chin. He doesn't have Maidana's stamina. Maidana could go 15 rounds all day like that. But he's built like that. He's built to fight that way. AJ's not built to fight that way. He's a counter puncher. He looks for openings. Do you see what I mean? He's looking for... look at the fight when he had with Povetkin. He kind of was jabbing to the body, and then he came over the top with a right hand. So that's the way he fights. Now, if he starts trying to change that and start becoming more aggressive, start going gung-ho and start leaning on Usyk, does he know how to do that? I don't know whether you can learn that in one camp. Fury's a master at that. Fury does that. That's what Fury is able to do that. He's able to maul you. He did that to Cunningham. He absolutely mauled him and he tired him, and Cunningham had nothing left, But I don't know whether Joshua can get down dirty like that. I don't know whether
and then Fury got dropped against Cunningham in that fight, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He got dropped heavily as well.
Yeah.
So can Joshua? That's my question to you guys. Can Joshua do that? I haven't really seen him in his career do that. I've not seen him
we haven't, and this goes back to exactly, you know, I was hearing a story from somebody in Joshua's camp when they were getting interviewed, and Johnny Nelson was there, and they were chatting about how AJ's dropped mostly 13 sparring partners and all this and all that carry on, and Usyk's not going to present Joshua with those openings. Joshua's going to have to go looking for those openings, and this is what I was saying earlier. By throwing those feints, you know, by being aggressive, he's going to leave himself exposed. And as we saw against Tony Bellew, that's when Usyk comes on strong. And Usyk troubled Joshua late on in that fight. Usyk troubled Joshua. If that fight had gone for 2 more rounds, I think he would have stopped Joshua.
Ray,
And that's being on the back foot.
You know, Ray, you know, did you remember that sparring story when Mayweather got asked about Canelo apparently was hurting everybody in sparring, and Mayweather got asked that, have you heard Canelo's been battering everybody in sparring? And Mayweather's reply was, I'm Floyd Mayweather. I'm no sparring partner, you know? So that's my response to that Usyk isn't no sparring partner. He's Oleksandr Usyk, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, you can go on all that about, okay, who exactly is he be sparring? What's he doing this and who is he doing that? But we haven't really seen him do what we're describing against that stature of fighter in terms of, you know, a similar shorter heavyweight. He hasn't. So I'm not sort of filled with that confidence that he can succeed that way. Yeah, he's got more than a puncher's chance of doing a job against Usyk. But the way we thought he would do it, I thought he would do that in the first fight. You know, and for some reason he elected to box, and try and outbox a boxer, which wouldn't work. I know he's improved that as part of his arsenal throughout the years. But don't forget, we're talking about 2 Olympic gold medalists here. So they should be comfortable with that particular style anyway. I just think the other point about Usyk, people are forgetting to mention is his power slightly underrated, and his footwork's brilliant. He cuts off the ring so well. And I think if Joshua's not careful, his feet will end up getting tied up in knots. And we all know what that happens. He becomes a statue, a sitting target. He could end up becoming a sitting duck. I just hope that doesn't happen, because if it is, he won't last.
He could do. I mean, Dom's back in the comments. Head says Usyk, but heart says AJ wins by KO in round 8. Dom, I'm loving that prediction. I think it'll be 8, 9, or 10. I think it'll be later on. But just in relation to what you said there, Ray, and I agree, to be fair, there is obviously with Usyk's footwork and general skill, there is always that risk that he'll cut the ring off and that'll cause issues for Joshua. But is there not an argument for it? It might make sense for Joshua. It's a big risk, but I think the only way he wins this fight is taking a big risk. And that risk for me is let Usyk get into a little bit of a rhythm, get a bit of confidence, and when he's cutting the ring off and he thinks he's got Josh where he wants him, that's the point where he needs to explode and show some aggression.
It depends how far behind, not just on the scorecards he is, but because that requires a lot of confidence. That requires a lot of confidence to do. Like Usyk did that. I keep talking about Tony Bellew fight because he gave those rounds away, but he had the confidence to think, you know what it is? I'm going to wear you down and I'm going to get at you. That was part of the game plan. Joshua's, in my opinion, quite fragile. Yeah, in my opinion, I think his confidence is shot. So if Usyk races into any iota of a lead, I think Joshua's one of those that I think, you know what? It's a bit like a team fighting relegation going 2-0 down in the first half an hour. They've got a mountain to climb, and already they're going into halftime thinking, "Oh, we're going to struggle."
Harsh.
You know, I kind of think that with Joshua. I think that with Joshua, I think his confidence isn't what it was, you know, 5 years ago. He's not psychologically, he's not there yet, and I think that's I said it on the last time we did a video about Joshua. That's one of the biggest things, as well as his stamina. They need to adjust Anthony Joshua psychologically, because for me, any boxers will tell you the fights are won mostly outside the ring. It's psychological. Boxing will always say is 90% mental, and I think for me it's key in this fight that Anthony Joshua is 100% mental, because if he's 90% mentally going in that ring, he's going to get found out.
No, right. I'm all done if you guys are. Imran, any last points?
No, I think hopefully it's a great fight. Hopefully both guys come out safe and we get a good scrap.
There we go. That's what we're all hoping for. Wrapped up beautifully. Guys, thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you to Imran as well, guys. As I said, Imran Mir TV, check it out. It really is one of the best boxing channels around, and we're lucky enough to get Imran on with us fairly regularly. So thank you for joining us, Imran. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.
No worries.
Take care, guys.